You are listening to Confessions of a Counselor podcast. Here we will talk all things mental health in bite-sized chunks. Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Counselor, a podcast about mental health in bite-sized chunks. I'm your host, Janice, and in today's episode, I thought we would talk about bringing together two powerful concepts that I think are really important, and that's about finding and becoming our best or favorite self, and how this ties into the concept of the 4 agreements and how we can start to integrate this into the therapeutic process. In the therapeutic journey, you often hear therapists talk about finding your best self. And I think this is a really great tool for discovering what's most important to us. And along the way, I've started to develop the phrase favorite self instead of best self, because our favorite self doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be without flaws. It can be just who we like the best, the version of us that we find our favorite, like our favorite friend or our favorite snack. I feel like it's a little bit more gentle in its approach. So it isn't about perfection. It's about progress and aligning with who we truly want to be. So the key to accessing and nurturing this favorite self is through self-compassion. So how can I be gentlest with myself? How can I discover and develop a self-compassion for myself that allows me to make mistakes, allows me to not be perfect, and allows me to keep going and keep trying even when maybe things aren't going the way that I wanted them to go. So in this favorite self, it's about, again, fostering that sense of inherent goodness that we've been talking about in the other episodes of the podcast, where can I believe that I am good enough just as I am without having to prove or provide evidence for that worthness. So one of the things that I learned early on in my counseling career was about the 4 agreements. And these principles can be really, really helpful in giving us a guide or a value set. The preface that I like to give with the 4 agreements is sometimes it can come off as rigid rules or specific things that we have to do. And what I like to do with the 4 agreements is use them as a guideline, as a reference point for how can I be the most compassionate to myself and the most compassionate to others around me. So in terms of merging these two concepts together, I want to take the favorite self, the how do I be compassionate to myself, and then take the guidelines of the 4 agreement and merge these two ideas together and find a way to lead with compassion in everything that we're doing. So let's go over what those 4 agreements are. First is be impeccable with our words. Second is don't take anything personally. 3 is don't make assumptions. And 4 is always do your best. So when we're breaking down these concepts, first with be impeccable with our word, this means that we want to speak with integrity. I want to make sure that the things that are coming out of my mouth, the things that I'm saying, the things that I'm standing behind are truly aligned with who I am and the values that I hold. So not only am I making sure that I'm speaking from a place of kindness and compassion, but I'm making sure that the words that I say are things that I truly mean. So that might mean slowing down and making sure that that's the answer that I want to give. That might mean sitting back and not participating in a conversation sometimes because I don't have something to say. I want to be kind and truthful with what I'm sharing. And that's the essence of the be impeccable with our words. Am I being kind? Am I being truthful? Can I stand behind what I'm saying? Next is don't take anything personally. So this is a really big one and something that I kind of talk about in different ways and different concepts in the therapeutic process. So this is one that I want to remember that if someone is not personally sharing something with me, then their thoughts, their beliefs about me, their perceptions of me are none of my business. So if someone isn't directly sharing feedback with me, then anything that they are thinking or feeling or believing about me is none of my business. So I want to make sure that I'm not taking my assumptions about someone personally. I'm not I'm not taking what I think that they think about me personally. I'm not thinking what I think they believe about me personally. I'm not placing myself in the center of someone else's world. So when I start to detach, when I start to notice what is important to me and how am I showing up as my best self, then I can stop taking the opinions of others to mean something about me. Unless, again, with the exception to that rule, is if someone is giving me feedback, then I want to make sure that I'm listening and then taking on what I need to take with that person's feedback. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. So again, assumptions lead us into this rabbit hole trap where I'm often creating misunderstanding or miscommunication when I start to assume the other person's intentions, their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs. And so I want to take a step back when I start to notice that I'm assuming this about someone or I'm making up a story in my head about this person. Can I take a step back and say, hey, I'm making this assumption or I'm making this story up about our interactions, and check in and find the evidence. Is this actually what's happening, or is this the assumption that I'm making about the situation? And when I stop to make assumptions, when I stop presuming that I know best about what's happening in the world, then I can start to have this gentler view both of myself and others because I'm not assuming the worst, which is often what happens when we're making assumptions. I'm often assuming the worst of myself or of others. And finally, we want to talk about the last one, which is always do your best. And this is really that integration between my favorite self and my best self. So my best is, again, always going to fluctuate. It's always going to be different and varying in its degree, right? So my best on one day might not be my best on the next day. I think a good example of this is if I'm not feeling well, my best that day isn't going to be running a marathon. My best that day is going to be making sure that I'm taking care of myself and making sure that everything that needs to get done is taken care of, or I've asked someone else to do that for me. So we really want to make sure that I'm not putting myself up on a pedestal. I'm not expecting too much of myself, but this best favorite self is that I'm, again, trying to lead with that integrity that is aligned with my values and who I believe I am as a person. So this is an act, again, of grace and self-compassion. Can I be the gentlest with myself? Can I make sure that I am doing my best to try and show up in the most authentic way possible? So by leading with self-compassion and my favorite self, I'm slowly starting to integrate these 4 agreements and how they create a powerful framework to live in integrity with grace and an authentic life so that I can build connections and I can build community that bring me closer together and feel more fulfilling. So it's a practice of gentle awareness of how I'm showing up in the world and what assumptions I'm making and how I'm leading in my relationships. This really allows me to bring a sense of grace and compassion to the way that I'm showing up. That's all for today's episode of Confessions of a Counselor. Remember to nurture your best self with compassion and let those guiding principles lead us in the way that we're showing up. Until next time, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Confessions of a Counselor podcast is available anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts on Apple and Android. New episodes are released every Friday. If you enjoyed today's episode, please join the conversation. Leave a review or subscribe to the podcast hosted on Spotify. You can find all these details on janicelyons.com. Until next time, take care.